Good morning. If you have not already read the readings for today, this Sunday, Lent 4, maybe pause and read those first. They are 1 Samuel 16, 1-13, Psalm 23, Ephesians 5, 8-14, and John 9, 1-41. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not be in want. Psalm 23, instantly recognizable. Perhaps the best known piece of scripture in the entire Bible. This is a psalm that we so often go to for solace. Like a nice warm blanket that we can wrap around ourselves in times of trouble. There is a reason why we so often hear it at funerals. It is good for whenever one has to walk through that valley of the shadow of death and need comfort. Need to be reminded that God is your shepherd who walks with you, who never leaves your side, who protects, cares for, and abides with you always. I think that there will be a lot of people turning to the psalm in the coming days and weeks and months as this pandemic continues. As more people die, as more people fall ill, as more people struggle through the effects of closures and quarantine and isolation, as more people grapple with their feelings of anxiety and fear and uncertainty. Psalm 23 is a tool for us in times like these. It is a gift. It is a nice warm blanket that we can wrap around ourselves and maybe even share with others. Maybe it is something that you can turn to too. It's difficult for me to imagine how long it is going to be before we're able to gather together in person again. What does it mean to be the church in times like these? If you have any good thoughts on that, by the way, please let me know. This is something that we get to figure out together. What does it mean to be the church? What does it mean to follow Jesus in times like these? Those questions were rattling around my head as I read this week's gospel from John. It was really long, wasn't it? The first time I read through it, actually, I got halfway through and then I had to go back to the beginning and start over again. Maybe it was just me, but I found it a little confusing. My initial takeaway on this reading was that there are a lot of bad questions being asked. And I think that there was a lot of talking without a lot of listening going on. Something else felt strange to me about this reading, and it took me a while to figure out what it was. In this reading, Jesus seems like he's absent for a lot of it. Other than stories from before Jesus' birth or between the crucifixion and resurrection, the gospel stories hang on Jesus' words and actions. However, in this story, Jesus shows up. I am the light of the world, does his thing, spit, mud, go wash, and then disappears. He is missing for that big chunk in the middle, the hubbub of voices of the Pharisees and the neighbors and the man himself and the man's parents. All that noise. And I'm sure there is something interesting to be found in that absence. Something meaningful and beautiful to be found in all that hubbub. But not for me this week. Not in times like these. With these big questions rattling inside my head. What does it mean to be the church? What does it mean to follow Jesus in times like these? And so I looked to Jesus, the light of the world. I paid attention to what he was doing, and two things really grabbed my attention. The first is that Jesus just shows up and gives sight to this guy, spurred on by a bad question by his own disciples. Who sinned, him or his parents? He just does it. He just helps him. He doesn't ask what he did or didn't do, believe or didn't believe to deserve it. Jesus says it's just so that God's work might be revealed. This is what God's work looks like. The second thing that grabbed me came after all that noise. The noise which ends with the man who was born blind being driven out. Driven out. Driven out of what? His town? His community? Was he scared? Did he feel unprotected and vulnerable and alone? I wonder. John writes, Jesus heard that they had driven him out, and he found him. Jesus said, and then Jesus says some things. But what sticks out to me is that Jesus heard. Jesus noticed this man who had been driven out and isolated. And then it says Jesus found him, which means, of course, that Jesus had been looking for him. He searched out and found this poor, lonely, lovely, vulnerable, and hurting soul. And of course he did. Because Jesus is a good shepherd. It's not the complete answer to what it means to be church, what it looks like to follow Jesus in times like these. But I think it's a start. Looking to our faithful shepherd, looking to the light of the world, I think we can start by helping so that God's work may be revealed. I think that we can start by listening for and seeking out those who are isolated, the lonely, vulnerable, and hurting. The author of Ephesians writes that now in the Lord you are light. Live as children of light, for the fruit of the light is found in all that is good and right and true. We are the church. We have the light of Christ in us. We have been illumined by the light of the world. We have been made carriers of the love of God. In times like these, let us follow where Jesus leads us, to where God is already working and doing marvelous things. Be light to this world, to the lonely, scared, and hurting. Shine out brightly, showing all that is good and right and true.